The galaxy was wide and cold, filled with countless worlds and unending wars. For centuries, the Xyrelians, an insect-like race with hard shells and sharp minds, had ruled over star systems with fear. Their queen, Xylera, was known across the stars as a ruler of iron command. Her enemies whispered her name with dread, and her soldiers followed her every word as law. To defy her meant death, and to serve her meant honor, yet even a queen of such strength could not escape fate. On the edge of a forgotten sector, a great battle raged. Human fleets clashed with Xyrelians in burning skies. Explosions painted the blackness of space with fire, and ships turned into metal graves. At the center of the storm was the Queen's flagship, a massive vessel shaped like a blade of night. She had led her army to crush the humans once and for all, but something went wrong. A surprise attack broke through her defenses. Human cruisers unleashed firepower stronger than expected, tearing into the Xyrelians' lines. Her flagship was struck by a torpedo. Systems failed and alarms screamed in the dark halls. The ship shook violently, and the Queen was thrown against her throne. Her guards rushed to protect her, but flames and smoke filled the chamber. "Evacuate," she ordered coldly, her voice steady even as the walls groaned. They obeyed, but the ship spun downward toward the surface of a barren moon. The crash was brutal. Metal twisted and shattered. Dust clouds rose high into the thin atmosphere. When silence finally returned, the once mighty flagship lay broken across jagged rocks. Inside the wreck, Queen Xylera crawled from the wreckage. Her shell armor was cracked, her crown dented, and blood darkened her side. Around her, the bodies of her guards lay still. The smell of smoke and ash hung heavy. She tried to stand tall, but pain lanced through her leg, forcing her to lean against a broken wall. She was alone. For the first time in years, the Queen of the Xyrelians had no army at her back. Only silence surrounded her, and the endless dust of a forgotten moon. She closed her eyes and prepared herself. Death, she thought, would come soon. Perhaps by suffocation in this thin air, perhaps by enemies who would find her wreck. Yet instead of death, she heard something else, footsteps crunching against rock. Her eyes opened sharply. A shadow approached, outlined by the faint light of distant stars. The figure was not insectoid, not scaled, not alien. It was tall, upright, with a thin frame and strange, soft skin. She hissed under her breath, recognizing the form even before his voice reached her. A human. Captain Elias Ward, a soldier who had been stranded when his small fighter was shot down, had seen the fire in the sky and followed the trail of smoke. He expected wreckage, maybe supplies, maybe a dying enemy. What he found was far greater. The Queen herself, struggling yet unbroken. For a long moment, the two stared at each other. His hand rested on the grip of his weapon, while her claw twitched as if ready to strike. Silence hung heavy between them, filled with hate and history. Yet Elias did not fire. Instead, he slowly stepped forward. His weapon lowered, his other hand reached out. "You're hurt?" he said simply, his voice calm. The Queen's eyes narrowed. She did not understand. Why would her enemy show concern? She had ordered fleets to burn his people's worlds. She had sent armies to crush his kind. And yet, this lone soldier knelt beside her, lifting the wreckage, pinning her leg. Xylera hissed in pain as the metal shifted, but she was free. "You will regret this," she whispered, her voice like steel. "Maybe," Elias replied, pulling her up carefully. "But I couldn't just walk away." He guided her toward a shallow cave not far from the crash, half dragging, half carrying her weight. The barren moon offered little, but it gave shelter from the wind and the falling ash of the wreck. Inside the cave, he set her down gently and searched through a survival pack he had kept since his crash. He tore cloth, cleaned her wounds, and sealed them with a small medical kit. His hands were steady, though she watched him with cold, unblinking eyes. "You are strange," she finally said, her voice soft but sharp. "Your kind fights with fury, yet you treat me as if I am one of your own." Elias met her gaze without fear. "Because life matters," he answered. "Even yours." The queen turned her face away. His words unsettled her more than his actions. Among her people, mercy was weakness. Pity was shameful. To help an enemy was unthinkable. Yet here was a human, bloodied and weary, giving her aid without demand. As the hours passed, the wind outside howled, carrying dust across the barren plains. Elias built a small fire with scraps of wreckage, warming the cave with faint light. The queen sat silently, her thoughts heavy. She studied him as he worked, noting the way he hummed softly under his breath, the way he pressed forward despite exhaustion. Why, she wondered, would he risk himself for her? When the fire burned low, Elias finally sat across from her. His eyes, tired but strong, met hers. "We're stuck here, at least for now," he said. "So we'll need to survive together." Her pride bristled. She was queen, she was conqueror. She was not one to share survival with an enemy. But her body was weak, her strength failing. She gave a short nod, neither agreement nor refusal. That night, as the stars wheeled slowly, above the barren moon, the most feared queen in the galaxy sat across from a lone human soldier. The silence between them was heavy but not empty. It was the silence of two enemies who had become something else, companions bound by survival, and though she did not yet know it, this was the beginning of a story that would shake empires. The days on the barren moon passed slowly. The harsh winds swept across jagged rocks and scorched plains. Outside, the remnants of the Queen's flagship glimmered faintly under distant stars, a reminder of the power she had lost. Inside the cave, survival became the only concern. Captain Elias Ward moved with careful efficiency. He scavenged pieces of metal from the wreckage, fashioned a small filter to make the thin atmosphere breathable for the Queen, and gathered what meager water he could find from frozen deposits beneath rocks. Xylera watched silently. Her body still ached. Her shell cracked and her pride burned like fire against the human's quiet determination. "You move quickly," she said one morning, her voice rough from disuse. "I have to," Elias replied, adjusting a small device that hummed faintly. "We need shelter, food, and water, and you need to stay alive." Xylera's eyes narrowed. "Why do you care? You could leave me to die and return to your kind." Elias glanced at her, his gaze steady. "Because it is the right thing to do. You saved people too once. I would not leave anyone in need." She frowned. That statement confused her. She had never known mercy to be given freely. Among her people, strength meant victory, compassion meant weakness, and trust was earned through power. Yet here was a human, exhausted and alone, working tirelessly for her, showing care without expectation. For hours they worked together. Elias taught her how to move carefully over sharp rocks and how to find food sources hidden beneath the dust and stone. He even showed her how to build small traps for small animals that scurried through the craters. At first she resisted, stepping back whenever he offered assistance. She was a queen, not a student. But survival had a way of teaching lessons faster than pride. Over time, Xylera began to mirror some of Elias's methods. She learned to use tools in ways her people would have considered beneath her. She learned that patience could bring life, that observation could replace force. Every evening, after long hours of scavenging and building, they would sit across from each other near the small fire Elias had managed to keep alive. The firelight danced over her cracked shell, highlighting the jagged lines of her armor. Elias's eyes, bright and calm, reflected the flames. "You are stronger than you think," he said quietly. She laughed softly, a sound strange and foreign even to her. "Strength is not enough," she replied. "You have taught me something that my armies never did. They only taught me fear and obedience." Elias shrugged. "Fear can protect, but it does not inspire. Obedience can win battles, but it does not build loyalty." Xylera studied him in silence. The human had no command over her. He did not demand her allegiance, yet his words carried weight she had not felt in years. Her mind turned over his lessons, considering what they meant for her people, for her empire. One evening, a faint red glow appeared on the horizon. A small human shuttle had arrived. its engines barely holding together after a long flight across the system. Elias's eyes lit with hope. Rescue was coming. But Xylera felt unease. She was a queen. Her people would see her survival as a failure of leadership, and Elias, the human who had saved her life, risked everything, and refused to treat her as a monster, would be caught in their scrutiny. The shuttle landed near the cave. A small group of humans emerged, cautiously approaching the fire. Elias waved, relief evident on his face. But Xylera stayed back, watching silently. As the humans worked to repair their craft, she finally spoke. "You saved me," she said. "Even after everything, you risked yourself." Elias nodded. "Because someone had to. And someone did that for me once. That is how the world works. You save others because you can, not because you are rewarded." She tilted her head, her mandibles twitching in thought. She remembered the first time she had been saved, an act of mercy that had changed the course of her life. Now she saw it mirrored in a human, a species she had thought weak, fragile, and unworthy of admiration. Over the following days, the queen and the soldier worked in careful coordination. Elias repaired the small shuttle to fly them back to human space if necessary, while Xylera used her strength to carry heavy debris and craft tools from metal shards. They began to understand each other's methods. Where Elias relied on patience and observation, Xylera relied on power and endurance. Together they formed a system stronger than either alone. One morning, as the faint light of the distant sun touched the moon's surface, Xylera spoke quietly. "I have never known anyone like you," she said. "Your strength is not in force. It is in calmness and persistence. You survive because you think, not because you conquer. Humans, you are more dangerous than I expected." Elias smiled faintly, his eyes tired but unbroken. "Dangerous? Maybe. But we survive because we care, even when it hurts us. That is our advantage." She considered this. Among her people, advantage came from fear, from weapons, from obedience. But here was a human who showed a different kind of power, one she had never understood. Perhaps it was why he had saved her, why he continued to protect her even when the galaxy had turned against both of them. That night, as they rested, a small storm swept across the barren moon. Dust and stones rattled against the cave's entrance. Elias secured their shelter, but Xylera noticed something in his movements, calm, methodical, unshaken by danger. She realized that this human, who had once seemed fragile and insignificant, possessed a mind as sharp as any Xyrilian warrior, and a courage that surpassed many of her own soldiers. The queen felt a strange warmth inside her. It was not anger, nor fear, nor pride. It was admiration tempered by caution. She could not yet trust him fully, nor could she understand why she felt compelled to watch his every move. Yet she could not deny the truth. Elias Ward had changed her perspective. Over the next week, they continued to survive together. They shared stories of home, of battles fought, of losses endured. Xylera spoke little of her empire, revealing only fragments of her past carefully measured. Elias spoke of Earth, of human cities, of oceans and mountains and forests he hoped to see again. Each tale built a bridge between them, fragile but strong. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Xylera turned to him. "When we return, your people will not understand why you spared me. They will see only an enemy, a creature of war." Elias looked at her, his expression calm. "Maybe, but they will understand in time. Humans are patient, and they learn from what is right, not just what is easy." The queen remained silent, considering his words. For the first time, she questioned everything she had been taught about strength, about power, and about loyalty. Perhaps the galaxy was not ruled by those who wielded the strongest weapons, but by those who understood courage, mercy, and the value of life itself. As the nights passed, a new rhythm formed between them. Elias tended to the cave and the equipment. Xylera helped where she could, learning to rely on another being without demanding control. Together, they built a small life on that lonely moon, fragile but enduring, shaped by trust that neither had expected. And though neither spoke the word aloud, both knew it was a temporary peace. Outside the cave, the galaxy waited. Allies and enemies would come. The Queen's empire would never forget her absence. Humans would continue to fight for survival. Yet here, in this quiet corner of the universe, A human and an alien queen had discovered something extraordinary. They had discovered trust. They had discovered courage in unexpected forms. And they had discovered that the strongest weapon was not claws, not firepower, and not fear, but the choice to protect, to endure, and to believe in life itself. That night the fire burned low, casting long shadows across the cave walls. The stars above shone with distant light, and Xylera, queen of the Xerelians, felt something she had never experienced before. Hope. The barren moon had become a small world of its own. The cave, once a shelter against the cold dust storms, had been fortified with metal shards and pieces of the wrecked flagship. Elias Ward and Queen Xylera had settled into a routine of survival. They scavenged, repaired, and protected each other. For a brief moment it seemed as if nothing else in the galaxy mattered. But peace was never meant to last. A sharp vibration echoed across the moon's surface one morning. Xylera's antennae twitched, sensing movement from far beyond the crater rim. Her eyes narrowed, scanning the horizon. In the distance, glints of metal reflected the weak light of the sun. Xyrelians were approaching. Her people had found her. She froze, her thoughts racing. Every memory of command and conquest surged back. If they arrived and saw the human with her, they would act according to tradition. Elias, despite his courage, could not stand against the might of her fleet. She turned to him, her expression unreadable. "They are coming," she said simply. Elias stood, his face calm but his posture tense. "We have options. We can hide, we can fight, or we can surrender carefully. What do you want to do?" Xylera's mind swirled. Her instincts screamed to fight, to assert her power, to crush any who questioned her authority. But she looked at the human before her, tired, strong, and unwavering, and realized that fighting would only place him in danger. She hesitated. For the first time, her decisions were not about empire, but about a life that had touched hers in unexpected ways. "They will take me," she admitted, "and you will be captured." Elias nodded slowly. "Then we prepare. I will not let them harm you or myself without a fight." By mid-morning, Xerelians descended upon the crater. Ships hovered just above the moon's surface, and small patrols moved down to the ground. Their movements were precise, controlled, and deadly. The Queen's former guards were among them, along with soldiers trained to follow orders without question. Xylera stepped forward, her powerful presence commanding attention. Her soldiers recognized her immediately, and the others paused, wary of their queen's gaze. Yet when they saw Elias, their expressions hardened. A human soldier, one of the enemy, stood among them, unarmed, near the queen's side. Elias raised his hands, showing no weapons. "I mean no harm," he said. His voice was steady, calm, carrying authority without threat. The Xyrelians hesitated. Their queen's silence was unusual. She did not bark orders, she did not hiss in anger, she simply watched. The soldiers waited for a command, but none came. Xylera's mind was a storm of conflict. Tradition demanded the human's death, a clear message to the galaxy that the Queen's word was law. But her experience on the moon had taught her something else. This human, fragile and defiant, had shown courage, mercy, and intelligence beyond her expectations. "Bring him forward," one officer finally said, stepping closer. "The human who endangered the Queen's life must be judged." Xylera's antennae twitched. She did not respond immediately. Her thoughts raced back to the days spent with Elias, the fire they shared, the stories they exchanged, the patience he had shown. He had risked everything, not for reward or power, but because it was right. That simple human choice had shattered her understanding of strength. She stepped forward. "He will not be harmed," she said, her voice firm but measured. "He is no threat to us." The soldiers froze. Orders were clear and defiance was punishable. Yet the Queen's word carried weight. The tension was thick. One officer hissed in frustration. "Your Highness, he is an enemy. Our laws are absolute. To spare him is dishonor." Xylera's gaze hardened. "He saved me. He risked himself to preserve life. That is not dishonor. That is wisdom." Elias, standing quietly, watched the exchange. He had expected hostility, even execution, but he did not flinch. There was calm in his confidence, a quiet strength that seemed to affect even the Xerelians around him. The soldiers reluctantly fell back. Some whispered among themselves, unsure how to reconcile the Queen's command with centuries of tradition. Xylera turned to Elias. "Come with me. You will remain under my protection until I determine your fate. Speak only if necessary. Elias nodded. He understood the weight of her words. Though free for the moment, his survival depended entirely on the Queen's decision. Yet he did not fear her. He had seen the choices she could make, and he believed in the better nature she had shown him. As they returned to the Queen's transport, the Queen's mind churned. Her empire, vast and disciplined, would not accept hesitation. Her advisors would question her judgment. Her soldiers would see weakness, and yet she could not deny the truth she had learned. Strength was not only in claws, armor, or weapons. Strength was in courage and mercy, and in the decision to protect another life despite the cost. On the ship, Elias remained calm, tending to minor wounds and repairing minor damage with tools scavenged from the moon. Zaylera observed him quietly. His composure, his careful movements, and his calm efficiency impressed her. She could see why he had survived the crash, why he had endured days on a barren moon, and why he had risked himself for her life. Later, when they were alone in the transport's observation deck, Zaylera spoke softly. "I should execute you according to law," she admitted. "My people would expect it. They would call it justice." Elias met her eyes unafraid. "Perhaps. But justice is more than rules. It is choice, morality, and courage. You know what is right. You are the Queen. That is why you have the power to decide differently." Zaylera felt a strange weight lift from her chest. She realized that her understanding of leadership had been incomplete. It was not enough to rule by fear or expectation. True leadership required insight, judgment, and the ability to act beyond what tradition demanded. The transport landed on the Queen's flagship, orbiting the moon. As the massive vessel came into view, soldiers prepared to welcome her back, but their expressions changed when they saw the human beside her. Shock, confusion, and anger passed across their faces. Some whispered quietly, unsure how to respond. Zaylera's advisors approached, voices full of indignation. "Your Highness," one began, "this human is an enemy. To spare him is folly. You risk our authority and the respect of the Empire." She looked at them, her gaze sharp and unwavering. "He risked his life to save me. That alone proves his worth. Any decision beyond that is mine to make." The advisors faltered. They were trained to follow orders, not to question, yet her word carried weight. Even in the midst of centuries of tradition, they knew she was not a queen who could be ignored. Elias remained silent, observing the exchange. He did not fear judgment. He had survived far greater dangers, and he had acted according to his principles. The Queen's protection was enough for now. Later, in the quiet of the Queen's private chambers, she stood at the window, looking at the stars. Her mind was a battlefield of thoughts. Her empire expected obedience and tradition. Her people expected decisiveness and dominance. And yet, here was a human, quiet and unassuming, whose actions had taught her lessons she had never imagined. She turned to Elias, who was quietly repairing a damaged comm device. "You have shown me something my people never could. You have taught me that courage is not always loud, and strength is not always force." Elias looked up, smiling faintly. "I have learned from you as well, Your Highness. Not all humans are perfect, but we survive by learning, by caring, and by standing firm even when the odds are against us. You have done the same." The Queen nodded, a sense of resolve forming. She understood now that her empire might not agree, but she could no longer see strength in the same way. Perhaps the galaxy would never accept her choice, yet she knew it was right. And for the first time, Zaylera realized that the human who had saved her life was more than an enemy. He was a teacher, a mirror of courage, and a reminder that life was precious no matter the species. Outside, the stars continued to shine, indifferent to the struggles below. But within the Queen's mind, a quiet revolution had begun. A rift had formed, not in the galaxy, but in her understanding of what it meant to lead. And at the center of that rift was a human named Elias Ward, whose courage and mercy would change the fate of empires. The Zyrelian's flagship glided silently through the void of space, its massive hull reflecting faint starlight. Inside, Queen Zaylera moved with a measured grace, her thoughts consumed by a single question. How could she reconcile tradition with what she now understood about strength, courage, and humanity? The human Elias Ward remained calm beside her, quietly repairing a communications device. Though he had been captured and brought aboard her empire's warship, the Queen's command had kept him safe. His composure was remarkable. He did not tremble before her soldiers or bow to protocol. He simply acted, thinking carefully and doing what was necessary. Xylira's advisors whispered constantly, questioning her decision. "Your Highness," one said, leaning close to her, "you cannot protect him forever. Our laws are clear. To spare an enemy is to invite weakness and disrespect." The Queen turned, her antennae flicking sharply. "Do not lecture me on laws. You serve to enforce them, not to define courage or justice. This human has shown qualities none of you understand." Her advisors exchanged uneasy glances. They had served her for centuries, trained to enforce her authority, yet they could not fully grasp the Queen's hesitation. They had never encountered a ruler who valued mercy as much as command. Elias spoke quietly, his voice calm yet firm. "Your Highness, I did not come here to challenge you. I came to survive and protect life when I could. That is all any of us can do." Xylira studied him. The human's simplicity, honesty, and unwavering courage unsettled her. She realized that her empire, which measured power in armies, weapons, and obedience, had overlooked a crucial truth. Strength could exist in unexpected forms. The Queen's mind wandered back to their days on the barren moon. Elias had risked everything to save her, not for glory, not for recognition, but because it was right. He had been patient, resourceful, and steadfast. His courage had not been loud or violent, it had been quiet and enduring. That was the kind of courage that inspired loyalty, respect, and hope. Later, in a private chamber, Xylira observed Elias as he examined a map of nearby systems. "Do your people always act with such patience and care?" she asked. Elias smiled faintly. "Not always. But we survive by thinking ahead, by helping each other when we can, and by making choices that matter even when the risks are high. That is how we endure." The Queen considered his words carefully. She had always believed that power and fear dictated survival. Yet the human's logic was undeniable. Empathy, courage, and wisdom, qualities often overlooked, could be more powerful than armies or weapons. Meanwhile, the Empire's fleet prepared for inspection. High-ranking officers moved through the corridors, scrutinizing every action and decision aboard the flagship. They whispered of the Queen's strange behavior, of the human she had protected, and of her reluctance to enforce traditional punishment. "Your Highness," an advisor said sharply, "the soldiers are beginning to question your judgment. They fear that mercy will weaken their loyalty." Xylira's gaze was unwavering. "Mercy is not weakness. It is clarity. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act despite it. That human has shown me both. That is why I protect him." The words seemed to stun the advisor, who had never heard such reasoning. Across the room, soldiers glanced at one another, unsure how to interpret their Queen's decision. Silence followed, heavy with anticipation. Elias, sensing the tension, spoke again. "Your Highness, my survival depends on you, but I do not wish to complicate matters. If it is your will, I will accept any task you assign me." Xylira studied him in the soft glow of the chamber lights. She realized that the human's courage was not merely in his actions, but in his willingness to remain calm and steadfast under pressure. His presence reminded her that leadership was not about fear, but about trust and understanding. Days passed, and the flagship approached the human-controlled sector. Scouts reported no immediate threats, yet Xylira remained vigilant. She knew that the Empire and humans were bound to clash again, and that the presence of Elias could spark conflict. Still, she made a choice. In the grand observation deck, Xylira addressed her advisors and officers. "This human is no ordinary enemy," she declared. "He acted with courage, compassion, and wisdom. That is why he will remain under my protection. I will not allow fear of tradition to dictate my judgment. You will follow this command, or you will leave my service." The officers hesitated. Some whispered quietly, attempting to reconcile loyalty to the Queen with centuries of tradition. Others nodded slowly, understanding that defiance was futile. The Queen's word carried absolute authority, and even the most stubborn could not ignore it. Elias remained quiet, watching the display of authority and restraint. He understood that the Queen was taking a risk not only for him, but for the principles she now embraced. Her decision could alter the course of her empire, challenge centuries of tradition, and redefine leadership itself. As the flagship moved closer to human-controlled space, the Queen ordered simulations and training exercises to prepare for potential conflict. Elias assisted where he could, offering strategies based on human tactics and survival methods. His contributions impressed even the most skeptical Xyrelian officers, who began to recognize that his value extended beyond mere survival. One night, as the stars stretched endlessly across the observation deck, Xylera spoke to Elias privately. "Your actions on the moon, they have changed my understanding of strength. You survive not because you are stronger than I am, but because you act wisely with patience and courage. That is something my empire has never fully recognized." Elias nodded, his calm demeanor unwavering. "Strength is not only in power, Your Highness. It is in choices, in persistence, and in protecting life when it matters most. That is how we endure, and that is how we inspire others." The Queen considered his words deeply. She realized that her empire had relied on fear and obedience for too long. Perhaps the galaxy would never fully accept the idea that courage and mercy could outweigh power, but she knew it was true. Elias Ward had shown her that leadership was more than command. It was understanding, wisdom, and the ability to make choices that mattered. Over the next few days, preparations continued. The Queen allowed Elias limited freedom, trusting his judgment while maintaining careful oversight. Together they reviewed strategies, shared knowledge, and planned for potential encounters with hostile forces. The bond between them grew, grounded in mutual respect and understanding. Finally, a report arrived. A human convoy was approaching the sector, unaware of the Queen's presence. Xylera faced a critical decision. She could reveal herself and risk conflict, or remain hidden and let the humans pass. Her choice would define not only her relationship with Elias, but also the balance between her empire and the human worlds. She turned to Elias, her expression serious. "We cannot remain hidden forever. The humans will detect us eventually, and our actions now will determine how they perceive us. What would you do?" Elias considered carefully. "I would reveal ourselves, but cautiously. Trust must be built, not forced. Show them who you are, but show them what courage and mercy mean as well. That is how we survive, and that is how we earn respect." The Queen nodded. His reasoning mirrored her own thoughts, reinforcing her belief that courage and wisdom were stronger than fear and tradition. She made her decision. When the human convoy appeared on sensors, Xylera ordered the flagship to move into visible range. Communications were opened, and the humans were met with a surprising sight: the Queen of the Xyrelians, standing with Elias Ward at her side, alive and unharmed. Confusion and caution spread through the human ranks. They expected hostility, yet here was a queen who had once commanded fleets to attack them, standing with a human soldier as an equal. Elias stepped forward, his calm presence reinforcing the message. Xylera addressed the humans directly. "I am Queen Xylera. This human, Elias Ward, risked his life to save me. He acted with courage, patience, and wisdom. That is why I protect him, and that is why I offer peace. Your actions will be respected, and I ask the same in return." The convoy paused, uncertain how to respond. The words carried weight, but they were unprecedented. A queen of the Xyrelians, known for centuries of conquest, was speaking of mercy and respect rather than domination and fear. Elias watched quietly, knowing that the Queen had made a bold choice. The decisions she made now could shift the perception of humans and Xyrelians alike. Her willingness to challenge tradition and act according to what was right would be remembered long after this encounter. The flagship remained in position, a symbol of balance between strength and mercy. The Queen's gaze lingered on Elias, recognizing the truth she had long resisted. The human had not only saved her life, but had changed the way she saw leadership, courage, and the potential of her empire. And in that moment, amidst the stars and the hum of machinery, Xylera realized that the turning point had come. She had chosen not fear, not tradition, but understanding. The galaxy would never be the same. The Xyrelians' flagship drifted silently through the void of space. Inside, Queen Xylera stood on the observation deck, watching the stars stretch endlessly across the dark expanse. Beside her, Elias Ward remained calm, quietly repairing a small device. For weeks, the tension between human and Xyrelians had been delicate. Battles had been avoided, but suspicion lingered like a shadow over every corridor. The Queen's advisors paced behind her, restless and uncertain. They had witnessed a ruler who defied tradition, a queen who spared an enemy when the law demanded death. Some whispered in private, questioning her judgment, but all understood the truth. Xylera's choice was unshakable. The human convoy they had contacted earlier had confirmed what the Queen hoped. Her message of peace and respect had reached Earth's commanders, and cautious negotiations were underway. Elias had helped facilitate communication, providing insight into human tactics, culture, and values. His knowledge and calm demeanor impressed both sides. "Your Highness," one officer said quietly, "the humans are cautious, but they respond to your message. They do not attack. They are waiting to see if your words are genuine." Xylera nodded, her gaze firm. "They will see. Our actions will speak louder than words. Courage, mercy, and understanding are more powerful than fear and fire. This human has shown me that." Elias looked up, meeting her gaze. "You have taught me as well, Your Highness. Your courage to act against expectation, to protect life when tradition demanded otherwise, shows a wisdom few possess." The Queen considered his words. It was true. In the days since the rift, she had learned that leadership was not only about power. It was about understanding the value of life, the strength of trust, and the courage to act rightly even when the galaxy expected otherwise. Elias Ward had changed her perception, not through force but through choice. Later in the council chamber, Xylera addressed her empire. Soldiers, officers, and advisors listened in tense silence. "This human, Elias Ward, has proven that courage is not measured by weapons or fear. He risked his life for me without expectation of reward. That is a power far greater than conquest." Murmurs spread through the room. Some questioned her words, while others nodded slowly, seeing truth in her statement. For centuries, the Xyrelians had relied on force, domination, and obedience. Yet here was evidence that another kind of strength existed, one born from courage, wisdom, and mercy. Elias remained silent, letting the Queen speak. He understood that this was her moment, her choice, and her leadership. His role had been to survive and demonstrate what humans could achieve, and now it was being recognized in a way neither of them had expected. The Queen continued, "From this day forward, we will not judge life solely by the power it wields, but by the choices it makes. Courage, intelligence, and compassion are weapons stronger than any fleet. Let this be a lesson for all Xyrelians." A silence fell across the chamber. Soldiers stared at one another, realizing the magnitude of her decision. For the first time, many questioned not the Queen, but the values they had followed for generations. Elias's calm demeanor and unwavering courage had sparked a transformation within the Empire itself. Days later, the humans requested a formal meeting. The flagship moved carefully into position near Earth's defense stations. Xylera walked onto the observation deck, Elias at her side, to face the representatives of the human fleets. There was tension in the air, uncertainty in every glance, but both sides were eager to find common ground. The humans were cautious at first, asking questions, testing responses. Yet Xylera's words were measured and honest. She spoke of courage, of mercy, and of the lessons she had learned from a single human who had risked everything to save her. Her tone carried authority but also humility. Elias watched, quietly impressed. The Queen's presence commanded respect, yet her words inspired trust. Humans and Xyrelians alike listened, understanding that this encounter could change the galaxy forever. When the formal discussions concluded, the humans extended a gesture of friendship, a small but significant act. Xylera accepted, acknowledging the wisdom in their offer. She had learned that diplomacy, courage, and understanding could achieve more than fleets and weapons ever could. Later, as the flagship returned to orbit, Xylera and Elias walked quietly through the corridors. The tension had eased, but the lessons remained. Xylera reflected on the days spent together on the barren moon, the nights by the fire, and the moments when choice had defined courage more than strength ever could. "You have changed my life," she said softly. "Not just my life, but the way I see my people, my empire, and the galaxy itself." Elias smiled faintly. "And you have changed mine, Your Highness. You have shown me that courage is not only in actions but in leadership, wisdom, and the courage to act rightly when it matters most." The Queen nodded. Her empire had survived, her people had learned, and humanity had earned respect. The galaxy was far from peaceful, but a bridge had been built between two species that had once only known war. In the following weeks, Xylera issued reforms across her empire. She emphasized understanding, training, and patience in leadership. Soldiers were encouraged to value life and to recognize courage in unexpected places. The message spread quickly. surprising many who had long relied on fear and obedience. Elias worked closely with her, sharing human knowledge, strategies, and survival skills. His presence was a reminder that wisdom could come from any source, and that courage often existed in those least expected. One evening, Xylera and Elias stood on the observation deck, gazing at the stars. The galaxy stretched endlessly before them, full of worlds to explore, conflicts to prevent, and lessons to teach. "You will return to your people soon," Xylera said, her voice quiet. "And when you do, they will know what I have seen. They will know that humans are strong, not only in weapons or numbers, but in courage, mercy, and choice." Elias nodded. "I will tell them, Your Highness, and they will understand. Humans learn quickly when given the chance." The queen paused, considering the human who had risked everything for her. For centuries, she had ruled through fear and power. Now she ruled through respect, understanding, and wisdom. And it was a human who had reminded her of what true courage meant. When the day came for Elias to depart, the queen watched as his shuttle lifted off from the flagship. He waved briefly, a small but meaningful gesture. Xylera returned the wave, her antennae flicking gently in acknowledgement. As the shuttle disappeared into the void, Xylera felt a profound silence. It was not emptiness, nor sorrow, nor relief. It was respect. The human who had saved her had proven that life, courage, and choice were the most powerful forces in the galaxy. She would never forget that lesson. In the days that followed, the queen addressed her empire once more. "The galaxy is vast, and we are not alone. Strength is not measured by fear or power alone. It is measured by courage, wisdom, and the decisions we make when life hangs in the balance. Remember this, and you will honor not only our empire, but life itself." Her words were met with silence at first, then understanding. Soldiers and officers absorbed the meaning, and slowly, change began to take root. A new era for the Xyrelians had begun, one